Okay, we're live. Hello and welcome everyone to our first technical workshop for today. I am Mikael and I am honored to introduce our first speaker for this workshop. Our speaker is Mr. Yap Yee Qiang. He is currently a junior software developer at the Hacker Collective. The title of his workshop today is Tailwind CSS from Zero to Hero. So without wasting any more time, I invite Mr. Yap to the stage. Please welcome.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you all today. And first of all, I would like to thank everyone here for having me for today's workshop. So as the host have spoke that today I'll be speaking about Tailwind CSS, right? So for today, I won't be sharing too much on what is exactly Tailwind CSS is, but I just want to show you all the benefits, right? I want to show everyone the benefits of why using Tailwind CSS, right? And for today, I prepared a very interesting clone that we will be doing today together, right? And I will suggest everyone to code along with me. So for today, we'll be building an Airbnb clone, right? So in this Airbnb clone, we'll be using Tailwind CSS and also some very, very cool features that you can use in Tailwind CSS. And we also look into mobile responsive and how can we use all these very amazing icons, right? So just give me 2 minutes and I will demo what is all this clone about, right? So first of all, what we have in this Airbnb clone is basically a header. And as you guys can see, this header is quite amazing, right? Guys, it's quite amazing, right? So this header is not just, a typical header. It is actually mobile responsive as well, right? So all of this is actually using Tailwind CSS, right? And I will go into Tailwind CSS, the basics of it, and also what is actually Tailwind CSS about just in a bit, right? So what else do we have? So what we have is we have our hero section, which is, like a banner. And I will also be talking about, how can we make all these very, very cool, very small detail and small features, such as how can you make a text to be a linear gradient. So all this is done by Tailwind CSS, right? So I'll be talking about that for today's session as well. And we also will look into, some of the very, very cool things that you can do, such as grid, maybe flexbox, right? And all of these that you can do in actual CSS, you also can use it in Tailwind CSS, right? And but I would like to clarify that today we might not be able to finish the entire clone due to the time limit, but I will ensure all of you that I will provide as much value as I can possible, right? So we'll try to explore more of the features that Tailwind CSS provide to us, right? So without further ado, first of all, I will go into the basic of Tailwind CSS and give me just 2 minutes and let me explain. And probably I know all of you will be excited, right, to get started with the Airbnb clone, but just give me 2 minutes and let me explain what is Tailwind CSS, right? So Tailwind CSS is a utility-first CSS framework. And as you guys can see, this is actually Tailwind CSS website. And today, the reason that I didn't prepare presentation for all of you is because Tailwind CSS itself, it has a very, very beautiful website, as y'all can see over here, right? So Tailwind CSS is a utility-first CSS framework. So what do I mean by utility-first? Basically, it means that it will prepare all the CSS that you need in their code, and then all you have to do is just to use their code, right? Just to use the class names that you need in order for you to build your UI, your user interface, right? So this is what we mean by utility first. Basically, you prepare the utility first, and after that, you use it in your design, right? And the next thing that we have in Tailwind CSS is, of course, they have an API for your design system. So maybe some of you might think, why don't we use something like Bootstrap, right? Because it also have the same, concept and stuff like that. The reason is because Tailwind CSS provides us the customization. Basically, it prepares you a design system. And what you have to do is just to design the user interface on the constraint, right? Because you have your design system and all you need to do is just follow the system, right? Just use the utilities. And you might be wondering, is that actually a good choice? Because that actually doesn't bring any customization, right? Because Tailwind CSS prepares a system for you. Can you even change the system? Yes, the answer is yes, right? You can actually design your own design system and put it on your code on your backend. And then what you have to do is you just have to inject your utility, right? It is as simple as that. And for today, we'll look into that together, right? So Tailwind CSS also provide us a very, very cool color palettes, such as, let me just go ahead and find the color palettes for all of you. All right, it's actually here. So as y'all can see, right, you don't have to figure out the colors anymore, right? Guys, just think about that. It is actually quite amazing, right? You don't have to figure out what kind of colors, what kind of different variations of red color that you can put, right? Tailwind CSS provides you everything. It provides you all the colors and all the opacity of the color, right? So you don't have to play around with the colors or even play around with the typography or maybe even, the shadows of the box, right? And it's just as amazing as that, right? And it's not just that, right, guys? It's not just that. You can literally build anything you want. That is why I say that Tailwind CSS is very customizable, right? Basically, you prepare a design system, and after you have the design system ready, what you have to do is you just have to pull out the utility and put inside your frameworks and put inside a project, right? So basically, you can build anything like, where a very simple box such as like this. And as you guys can see, right, on the right, this is actually the code that needed to build this user interface over here. And as you all can see, right, it's just 57 lines of code. And just think about that, guys, without any CSS file, right? Just think about that. It's quite amazing, right? And you might be wondering, isn't that just inline styling, right? Isn't just inline styling? Basically, you write a CSS in your HTML tag, right? But that's not the case, right? I will show y'all why do I say so when we build the Airbnb clone, all right? So without further ado, guys, okay, I would like to go into the clone right away because I don't want to waste any more time. I just want to show you all the cool features and the power of Tailwind CSS, right? So before you go into that, right, I just want to let you all know that you all can get the template code, right, that I prepared for everyone in my GitHub, right? So if you all go to GitHub and you can go to my GitHub profile, which is Yap Yee Qiang, which is my name, and just search for Airbnb clone and you will be able to go to the GitHub profile. And basically, I include all the things that you will be doing for today's session and all the template codes that you need, right? Because for today's session, we will actually use not just Tailwind CSS, but we also use Next.js, which is a next generation framework for server-side rendering, right? Which is a framework of React.js. And for those that don't know, React.js is a library for to build user interface. But don't worry, if you're not comfortable with using front-end frameworks such as React or Next.js, or you don't know anything about server-side rendering, don't worry. Today, I actually prepared a template code for everyone so that we can focus on the power of Tailwind CSS, right? So of course, we will look into some basics of Next.js and server-side rendering, how to get props and stuff like that. But I will make it as simple as possible, right? So go ahead and get this template code. Just just clone this GitHub and then go ahead and go to a terminal and do git clone and stuff like that. Or you can just download the zip file if you want, right? So I will go ahead and do it right now so that y'all can actually see how I actually prepare the entire workflow of my project. So what I have to do right now is basically just copy this link over here. And what I can do, I can just say git clone. I'll just paste a link over here. So this, just in case for those that you are not familiar with GitHub and how to use Git, this is, we'll be starting from scratch today, right? So I will be guiding you all how to download this template code, how to configure Tailwind CSS, and also we'll start to build some user interface, right? So as you all can see here, we already clone our project. So what I have to do is I just have to go into my Airbnb clone folder. And what I have to do is I just have to say code dot, which means that I want to open the folder in my Visual Studio Code, right? So for those that you are just starting out to code, right, you might not be able to follow along, but don't worry, okay? Feel free to stop this video and also, stop this live session and take your time, right? Take your time and understand thoroughly and also to follow me, right? And code along. So I already opened my project and y'all can do that. So just maybe 2 minutes, right? I will try to explain what you have here. So basically a Next.js project, right? Everything that we write is actually in the pages folder. So let me just make it bigger so that y'all can see, right? So everything we are doing is actually inside the pages folder. And I will explain what do I mean by, everything we do, right? Then after that, you have this API folder. And as y'all can see, right, in this API folder, I actually prepared all the data that you need in order for us to actually put all those the images, the title of the places, the locations, all those details. So you don't have to hard code it, right? So we'll be using some of the backend API to help us do that, right? So that we can focus more on the design actually, right? So just put that away, right, guys? Just ignore that for a while. So the next thing, right, is index.js. So index.js is what we call as an entry file. Basically everything you do is actually inside the index.js file. And when you actually serve your project, the Next.js engine will actually look for the index.js in your pages file. So what you have to do, right, is in order for you to run this project, what you have to do is just go ahead and run. But before that, right, guys, remember to install all the dependency first. So this is what I would do as well. npm install, right? And just if you are using yarn, you can just write yarn add, right? And you will be able to install all the dependency. Yeah, so just give it a moment. And guys, feel free to ask any questions, right? If you have any questions regarding Tailwind CSS or even, Next.js, server-side rendering, or even how can you get started, right? So as you all can see here, I already downloaded all the dependencies, right? So now we'll get started, right? So what I have to do is I just have to write npm run dev. And for those of you that you don't know, why do we run dev and not run serve or maybe run start? Okay, because Next.js, if you look at the scripts, right, it actually say npm run dev, and you can actually serve your website by doing that. Okay, so what we do is npm run dev, and let us just make it get going. All right, so now it's serving on localhost 3000. Let's just open this one. So as y'all can see here, we have let's build Airbnb clone, right? So if you see this, this view already, which means that you successfully follow until this step, right? Which is our first step, configuring our Tailwind CSS, right? So what we'll be doing now, as you all can see, right, the H1 tag, it is actually a H1 tag, right? And what do I mean by that is because when your Tailwind CSS is configured, your H1 tag actually looks like a P tag, and I will explain about that later, right? So now what I will do is I will actually configure the Tailwind CSS, and the reason why I didn't configure it at the start is because I want to show you all how can you configure Tailwind CSS in your project, right? So that y'all can actually understand how Tailwind CSS work. So before you install the project, you can actually run this code, which is npx create next app -e with Tailwind CSS. Basically, it just configure Tailwind CSS for you. But I'm not doing that because I want to show you from scratch, right? So, and by the way, if you are not sure where to go to, this is actually in the Tailwind CSS documentation, right? Just go ahead and type Tailwind CSS in your search bar, and you will be able, and you're good to go, right? So next, what we have to do, right, is of course we have to install our Tailwind CSS and Post CSS, right? And I will not talk a lot about Post CSS. It basically just makes it work, right? In order for you to make your Tailwind CSS work in your project, you have to install that, right? So I will copy everything over here, and guys, and make sure that your Next.js version is 10 or newer, right? Probably once you install it, will be the latest version. So don't worry about that. So what I have to do, right, is I just have to install in my project, right? So I will split the screen and I'll put it inside here, right? So I'll just install this one. All right, and y'all can follow me along, right? So let's just install this one. All right, just give it some time. And then while it is actually installing, let me also explain what we'll be using for today's clone, right? So we'll be using not just Tailwind CSS, right? We will also be using something called Hero Icons, right? And what is Hero Icons? Hero Icons is basically all the SVG, right? SVG icons you can use. And it is actually made of Tailwind CSS. Basically, it means that all the SVG over here is actually just a text. So it's as easy as changing the color just by saying color red, and you can change the logo to red color. It's just as simple as that. And this is why I love Tailwind CSS so much, because you have all the tools you need, right? If you need design, just go for Tailwind CSS. If you need icons, you need logos, Hero Icons. As simple as that, right? So we'll be using just these two features that Tailwind CSS provide in today's build, right? So as you all can see here, the search icon, the globe icon, the user icon, the menu icon is all from Hero Icons, right? So go ahead and also check this out, right? While we are installing a dependency, right? So we actually done the installing the dependency. So now what we'll do, right, for the next step is we have to actually npx, right? Which means node package execution, right? we have to actually create a Tailwind CSS config file, right? And also a post CSS config file. So let me just copy this command over here and paste it over here. All right, so as you can see, we actually have our Tailwind config and also our post CSS, right? And the next step, okay, before we actually go to the next step, right, I just want to explain what is Tailwind config all about. It's basically for you to configure your Tailwind CSS, right? And do you guys remember that I actually mentioned that this looks like a H1 tag, which is what we expected, right? But in Tailwind CSS, the reason why Tailwind CSS is so customizable is because when you configure your Tailwind CSS in your project, it will actually remove all the default CSS. And this is actually quite powerful if you think about that, because I just want to ask, right, how many of you actually, when you actually try to style something, right, you want to style your headers, you want to style your images, how many of you actually face this problem, such as you have an imaginary margin? Can you see that? Can you see that? And you have to figure out, what is the pixels that you need, what is the length that you need in order for you to make a header and stuff like that, right? And it's so confusing sometimes, and sometimes you have problems, right? Why my image doesn't look the same, right? Because the default CSS actually adds some imaginary padding or margin onto your design already. So that doesn't actually give you a control over how you want your user interface to look like, right? But Tailwind CSS actually helps us solve that. Basically, what we have to do is we just have to copy this entire line over here, which is the purge CSS, right? And we just have to put it here. And basically, what this means is that whatever file that are inside the pages folder, which is inside over here, this over here, whatever files, no matter it's JS file, TypeScript, JSX, and whatever files that are inside the components folder, we want to remove all the default CSS. And if I save this file, and now what I have to do is basically I just have to stop the server and run it again, because you are changing the configuration. So you have to do that. npm run dev. And let me refresh the website. Okay, just give you a moment. All right. Okay, so now it's not working yet. Okay, the reason is because we haven't actually used the plugins, right? We haven't actually say that, okay, we want to use Tailwind CSS in our project. So what we have to do is basically just go in and copy these 3 lines of code, all right, and put it inside our styles, right, global.css. So basically just go ahead and remove everything, right, and paste your Tailwind CSS code. It's just 3 lines, right? And because of these 3 lines of code, then you can configure the Tailwind CSS. It's just as simple as that, right? So let me go ahead and save it, and let me refresh the entire thing again. All right, so just give it a moment. I might need to restart the server or not. All right, so it's refreshing. Yes, and we have it, right? Guys, can you see that? Now our H1 tag actually looks like a P tag, right? And the reason is because Tailwind CSS actually helps us to remove all the default CSS, which makes H1 tag looks like a H2, H3, and so on, right? All header tags looks like a P tag right now. And the power of that, right, is that you can fully control how you want your H1 tag to look like, how you want your maybe P tag to look like, how you want your button to look like, right? And this is so powerful, right? So now let's just get started, right? And first actually start to build our header. And yeah, and to be honest, right, guys, this is kind of cool, right? This header, right? The mobile responsive, everything is actually working. And can you guys see that? The search bar, right? When I hit, the medium breakpoints, it will actually hide the entire border and also the icons, right? And I will show you that how easy to do that in Tailwind CSS, right? Without using any media queries. And you guys might be crazy about that, right? And you might think that I'm crazy, right? How can you even do all these things, do all this mobile responsive without media queries? It is possible in Tailwind CSS, right? So now let's just get started, right, guys? So first of all, what I will do is I will go to my index.js file. All right, I'll remove my H1 tag for now, right? I just want to keep it clean, right? And what we have to do is let's just actually plan out what we want to do, right? So that we can have a clearer, the task that we want to complete, right? So basically for today, we actually just want to finish, try to finish the header and as well as the banner, right? So what we'll do is, all right, we want to get the header done. And also we want to be, complete the banner as well, right? So what I have to do, right? And this is just some, some Next.js thing or React.js thing. So if you are not comfortable with that, just go ahead and follow along, right? So the reason we are using Next.js today is because that it is easy for us to make all our sections, right, such as our header section, our banner section, into one component, so that we can reuse it anytime we want. Because just think about that, guys. If you have many pages, this is your home page, right? What if you have another page for login or sign up, and you want to have the same header? What you will typically do is you will rewrite again, right? You will copy paste the code again. But in using React.js, Vue.js, or all these front-end frameworks, you don't have to do that anymore. You just make your user UI into a component. You can reuse it straight away, right? So what I have to do is very simple. I just have to go to the root folder, create a new folder, which is called components. And components basically means that all the, small little parts that I want to put inside my website, right? And first of all, I want to have a header component, right? And it's actually a JavaScript file. And you guys might think, why do we even, do our HTML and JavaScript file? And you will see the power of that just in a minute, right? Sorry. So now what we'll do is I actually installed this very cool snippets, which is an extension, which is called the ES7, if I'm not wrong, ES7 React, Redux, and GraphQL. All these are very, very cool snippets that you can use. And what you can do with that extension is just as simple as underscore RFCE, and basically it creates a functional component for you, functional component, and with the export as well, right? And this is so efficient, right? And increase your productivity while you code. And you don't have to install that, right? You can just hard code it if you want, right? So now what I want to do right now is just write a very simple H1 tag and say I am a header. I just want to test it out, right? Whether we are successfully, put our header component inside our index.js. So what I have to do right now is just as simple as writing the header tag over here. And of course, I have to import up here as well. So import header from our components folder, right? I have to go one step up, and then I have to take my header.js, right? If I save it, can you guys see that? I am a header, right? So this means that it is working right now. So we don't have to actually code our header inside index.js. We can actually focus in only our header.js, right? So inside this file only, we'll be focusing on all our header, right? And this is so useful, right? Because just think about it, guys. If I want to have 3 headers at the same time, and you might not want to do that, right? But just show you an example, you can just put 3 header tags like this, right? And when you save it, you have 3 headers right away, right? It's as simple as that, right? All right, so enough talking about, components, right? Because today, the real deal is actually Tailwind CSS, right? So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is, of course, change this div to a header, right? And you might be asking, I thought that you said, H1 tag looks like a P tag. And why do you still want to use H1 actually? The reason is because it helps your SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. Basically, even though it doesn't look like a H1, it doesn't look like a header, but actually the Google will understand it as a header, right? So it is good for your search engine optimization. So your website, your page will be actually, rank a bit higher, right? So basically, I'll just change that to header. And what I actually want to have, right, is actually, to be, okay, just give me one moment. So actually, the first thing I want to have is, just want to clarify what we want to have in our project, right? So as you all can see in this project, we actually have 3 little parts, right? One part is, on the left side, which is our logo, right? And another part, which is in the middle part, which is a search bar, and the right part, which is like a menus, right? We have like a globe icon, we have like a, like a user menu, right, guys? So basically, we have 3 parts, and as y'all can guess, we'll be using grid for this, right? And I will show you how easy is it to use grid in Tailwind CSS, right? So what we need to do right now is actually to be able to get this image. And I just want to credit someone that actually allows me, give me permission to use all his resources. Because for today's clone, I'm actually getting the inspiration from Sunny Sangha, actually, which is one of my mentor, right? And he provides me these resources so that I can easily use all these, logos and all these actually images that we'll be using today. And I will provide you all that as well. So you all can just go ahead and copy the code if you all want, right? All right, so now what we want to do is basically we want to write 3 divs for our 3 parts, right? So we say div, And what you can do with this IMechE, right, which is this thing over here, you can just write ×3, and this will basically go ahead and create 3 divs for us, right? So this will actually represent our left section, which is our logo, and this will represent our middle section, which is our search bar, and the right section, which is our menus, right? And so now what we want to do actually is inside the first div tag, right? Inside the first div tag, I want to use an image, and we will not be using a normal image tag, right? I want to use an image that is provided from Next.js. The reason is because there are plenty of reasons why we use the image provided by Next.js, but I will not go into that, right, guys? So just follow along, and I will show you where you can go to if you want to understand more about the reason why we use the image provided from the Next.js, right? So just go ahead and import the image from next/image, and now what we can do is we can actually just go ahead and use it here, right? Image. Of course, guys, you might face some error here, right? Because you didn't provide any source, right? Of course, you have to provide source for image so that Next.js know where you are using your image from, right? So I will be using this link that is provided by someone else, right? So I will paste here, and y'all can go ahead and copy if you want, right? So basically, and y'all can see, right? I still face a problem over here, right? Because the reason is because if you are using Next.js image, you have to actually provide the width and the height, right? And also the layout, how you want your image to look like. So what I have to do right now is very simple. I just want to say layout, all right? And I want to say that I want to fill my entire page, right? So I'll say fill. And as you guys can see, it actually fills the entire page. And this is not what we want, right? We don't want to change the design of the actual logo. So what we have to do is very simple. We just have to say that we want our page. All right, sorry, I'll just give me a moment, guys. All right, so we just want our, our entire image to be contained, right? So it will actually contain its initial aspect ratio. So we say object fit, all right, contain. So as you guys can see, it will actually remains its initial aspect ratio. So it won't actually stretch out the entire page, right? And the next thing we want to do is actually to say that we want our position to be on the left, right? And you won't see this effect right now, but this will be useful later, right? You will see that it actually goes to the left itself, right? And now what we have to do is very simple. We just have to say that, all right? We just have to say that, okay, we want our, our entire image to be a height of 10, right? And you might not see anything right now, all right? Because this is because we haven't really actually give any, we actually never specify that what we want the height to be relative to. So we have to say relative, and basically this will actually make the image to be height of 10, and it will be relative to the div itself and not the entire page, entire browser. And guys, just let me explain what we are doing right here. You guys might be wondering, oh, Yee Qiang, I never see any CSS code. How can you even make it relative and a height of 10? The reason is because this is what I have mentioned just now. Tailwind CSS is a utility first CSS framework. Basically, it actually have all the CSS code you need on the Tailwind CSS that you just installed. Basically, what you have to do if you want to height of 10 of the image, you just have to say h-10. And basically, what this will do is it will actually apply a height of 2.5 rem, right? Because height of 10 is the 10 actually means all 4 sides. So if you divide 10 by 4, which is you get 2.5, right? And Tailwind CSS is actually using rem for its unit measure, so it's quite a standard way of using, right? And basically, it will make the image to become a 40 pixel, right? And this is so simple, right, guys? Just imagine that if you are using actual CSS, you have to write this entire thing over here, and you also have to specify the name, right? And I understand, right? Because when I was beginner, right? I have to figure out what kind of class names I want to put, right? And sometimes we want to be fancy about that, and sometimes you have a lot of class names that you conflict to each other, and this is called so frustrated, right? But with Tailwind CSS, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to actually create your own class names, or have to figure out what class names you want to put so that other people can understand what you are doing, right? We don't have to do that anymore. So height of 10, relative basically means position relative, right? And basically, it will make the div to relative. It's just as simple as that. And also, I want to actually give a margin on top and the bottom and make it equal, right? So normally what you would do in actual CSS is you would say margin top auto, margin bottom auto, right? But in Tailwind, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just say margin on the y-axis auto. And basically what this code will do is it will actually apply a margin top of auto and a margin bottom of auto right away for you, right? And guys, just think about that. This is so powerful, right? You don't have to write, margin top auto, margin bottom, or you don't have to write all your margin you want in auto, right? You can just write the y-axis, which is top and bottom, right? Because it's vertical, right? You want to make it auto. It's just as simple as that, right? And for, of course, you can't see any effect right now, but when we add some padding, to our entire header, it will actually take effects, right? So now what we want to do is let's just start to make the entire nav bar look something like this, right? Have like a shadow, right? It makes it feels like a 3D, right? So now what we'll do is we actually go ahead to style our header tag, right? So what we'll do is, first of all, we want to make the header to be sticky, right? Because we want the header to be always on top of the entire page, no matter where we go, right? So now what we can do is actually very simple. We can just say sticky. And it's so simple, right? You don't have to say position sticky, and you have to put your own class name again, right? And it's so confusing. It's so frustrated, right? You don't have to do that. Just say sticky, and it will make it sticky. Of course, you can't see anything right now, but later you will see that the effects, right? And of course, when you make it sticky, we want our header to always stick on the top. So we just have to say top 0. That's all, right, guys? That's all. So you don't have to, top colon 0 pixel. You don't have to do that anymore, right? And also, we want to make it always float on the entire page, right? So it will always be in front of the page, right? It will not be overlapped. So we want to put the Z index, and what we can do is we can just say Z1, or because we want to always in front, so let's make it bigger, C50. So no one will actually overlaps the header, right? So of course you can't see the effect right now, but we will slowly, it will slowly take into effect, right? The next thing I actually want to implement is actually to give a shadow, so y'all can actually see the header, right? So I want to give a shadow of medium. And guys, just think about that. You can actually specify what is the, the amount of shadow you want to provide, right? And guys, just think about that. To give a shadow, this is what you have to do in actual CSS. And guys, just think about that. This entire code is being simplified into just shadow SM. That's all. Shadow SM. SM means small. If you want to give it medium, you just have to say shadow MD, which stands for medium. So if I save this, guys, can you see that? This is so amazing, right? You don't have to, to write any more, very, very long lines of CSS code, and you don't even know what else it's doing. You just have to, say shadow MD in Tailwind CSS, and that's all, right? So we have like a, like a header over there already. So now it's more visible for us to actually know what we are doing, right? So the next thing we want to do is actually, of course, give some padding on the entire position, right? We want to give a top, left, right, and bottom. So what you can actually do in Tailwind CSS, you can just say P, which stands for padding, right? And it's so simple to understand, right? P stands for padding, M stands for margin, right? So padding of 5. Basically, padding of 5 will actually apply 20 pixels on the entire side, right? So if I save this, guys, can you see that this is looking amazing already, right? This is looking very, very similar to this already. So now I will actually wanted to show you how can we actually do mobile responsive, right? So guys, actually, if you look at here, right, if you actually take a look on this actual website that we already done, right, can you guys see that on the mobile view, right, actually this logo almost stick to the left, right? But when I actually make it larger, right, guys, just take a look at the logo. When I make it larger, can you guys see that it actually pops up a little bit? And this is because, when you go into a large screen, you don't want your logo to be stick to the left, right? You want make it to, come a bit, some inner, right? So how can we achieve that? Is by using media queries, right? Typically, that's what we'll do. But using Tailwind, you don't have to do that anymore. What you have to do is very simple. You just have to say when your screen hits a medium breakpoint. What do I mean by breakpoint? Breakpoint basically means that, the width that when the screen it hits, right? Medium breakpoint, I want the padding of the x-axis, which means the horizontal axis, right? I want to give it a 10 instead of 5, right? So if I save this, guys, just take a look. If I actually enlarge my screen. Can you guys see that? It actually pops a bit to the right because this screen right here is actually in the medium size already. It actually breaks the medium breakpoint. That is why the padding X of 10 actually being applied, right? And guys, just remember this, right? Tailwind CSS is mobile first, right? Mobile first design, right? Mobile first. Basically, it means that you have to actually specify how you want your entire UI to look in the mobile view. And then eventually you can just say medium, when it hits medium screen, what you want it to become. When it hits a large screen, what you want it to become, right? So guys, just let me show you a very, very quick example, right? So in the image here, right, in the image div, I can say something like this. I want the background to be initially background rate of, for example, maybe 300, right? And guys, can you see that? It is so simple, right? You don't have to say background color of red, and then you have to specify the opacity, and you don't have to do that anymore. You just have to say BG, which stands for background. So it's very easy to understand, right? Background rate of 300 opacity. So if you want to give it, like, for example, 900, it will actually become very, very dark, right? So it's actually not the opacity really. It's actually like the intensity, the saturation, right, of your entire color. And let me just make it back to 100, right? And guys, I just want to show you what do I mean by breakpoints, right? So if I put, when it hits medium screen, I want it to become BG rate of 200, for example, or maybe 300. All right, let's make it more intense, right? And for example, I want to, when it hits a large screen, I want to give it I want to give it a maybe BG rate of, let's say, 500, right? And let's say we'll do more, right? When it hits XL, which is extra large, right? I want to give you a background rate of 900, for example. So if I save this right now, and guys, just take a look. Initially, because Tailwind CSS is a mobile first, so initially it will be background rate for 100. But when it hits a medium screen, okay, medium screen, guys, can you see that? It changes to background rate of 300, right? So when it hits medium screen, it will actually apply the background rate of 300 onwards, right? Because Tailwind is mobile first, which means that it doesn't have a maximum width. It only has a minimum width of media queries, right? And guys, just imagine that by writing this MD colon BG rate 300, this actually applies this entire ugly lines of CSS code, right, in your entire CSS file, right? And you have to write entire thing here in order for it to work, right? But you don't have to do that anymore, okay, once you use Tailwind CSS, right? And guys, let me just continue to expand, and let me show you when it hits a large screen. Guys, can you see that? It actually becomes a background rate of 500, right? And if I continue to make it extra large, right, guys, can you see that? It actually becomes a background rate of 900. And this is so amazing, right? You don't have to write any CSS or, media queries anymore, right? You can just do something like that in Tailwind, right? And it's so amazing, right? But we don't want this actually. So let me just go ahead and remove. This is just a demo of how you can do mobile responsiveness in Tailwind CSS, right? So next, what we actually want is we actually want our entire 3 divs to be a grid columns of 3, right? So before we do that, I just want to put some color over here so that y'all can visually understand what do I mean by, grid columns of 3, right? So let me make this to background rate for 100. And I want to make this to, for example, background maybe blue of 100. Right? You can't see anything because it doesn't have width yet, right? So let me just put it there first, maybe 300, so that it is more visible, right? And then after that, maybe a green, right? Background green of 100, for example. 300. Make it more visible, right? So if I save it, now you can't see anything, right? But once I make it into a grid and I make it into a columns of 3, which means that these 3 divs will be side by side, right? Will be side by side, right? When I got a 4th div, it will actually go to a new row. And how can we even do grid in Tailwind CSS? And it is very simple. It's just as easy as saying grid. That's all, right, guys? That's all. So if once I put grid, you can't see anything yet because it's not in columns of 3. So you have to say grid dash columns dash 3. Basically, it means that you want to give a columns of 3, right? If once I've saved this guy, can you see that? It actually makes the 3 divs into 3 columns. And this is so powerful, right? Guys, just imagine that you don't have to say display grid. You don't have to say grid templates column, repeat 3, min, max 0, blah, 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 right? Guys, you don't have to do that anymore. It's as simple as saying, you want this to be a grid and a grid of columns of 3. That's all, right? And it's so easy to understand, right? And once you learn this, you will know, you will be, you will actually know, go back to your actual CSS anymore, right? Yeah, so this is the power that this is actually, how efficient you can be, right, when you use Tailwind CSS. And but we don't want to make this actually to be blue and green color. So I'll go ahead and remove this, but I will just leave it there first so that you all can still look at the effect of the entire div, right? So the next thing we want to do is actually the search bar. And this will be quite interesting, right, guys? How can we even make, like a red color, and this very, very nice looking border, right? And when I press, and I can type something here as well, right, guys? So how can we do this? And I also want to make it mobile responsive. So when it hits a small screen, I want to remove the border and also the icons. And how can we do that? So let's see. So what we can do, right, is very simple. First of all, we need to have an input, right? So once I save this will be the input. And guys, this is a bit ugly, right? So let's style this up first. So what I will do is, of course, let me remove this. Actually, now let's just put it there first for now. What I will do is I will add some class names over here, right? Class name. And you guys might be wondering, why is it class name and not class? Because in Next.js, class is a reserved keyword, right? It is actually for the the class objects, right? The object-oriented programming things, right? So that's why we are not using class, but we can use class name, right? So what we have to do is, of course, first of all, we want the outline to be nothing. And guys, just imagine that this is so simple, right? We don't have to say outline, transparent, or anything like that. We just have to say we don't want any outline. That's all, outline none. If I save this, now when I press my input, guys, can you see that the blue color outlines missing, right? So it's as simple as that. And now what I want to have is actually, I want to make the text to be gray. So whenever I write something in there, the text will be actually gray, right? So text gray, and you can specify the intensity you want. So I want a 600, which looks like a bit of, like a black color, but a bit darker, right? I mean, a bit lighter, right? So save it. So now once I type something, guys, can you see that? It actually looks like a gray color, grayish, right? And also the power of Tailwind CSS, right, is that you can also actually style your placeholder. But of course, we need to have a placeholder first, right? So what I will do here is, I will actually go ahead and put a placeholder over here, placeholder, right? And let's do something like this, right? So I'll name it something like maybe start your search, right? This is exactly what I put, right? Inside here, start your search. So what is the problem over here? Oh, okay. So I think that I accidentally removed something, right? Let me actually go ahead and make this. Oh yeah, okay. So I have this thing over here. Okay, so if I save this, so now we have to start your search. And guys, can you see that the color actually looks like gray color already? And I can actually change the color to red color if I want. So what I have to do is I just have to say placeholder red 400, for example. And guys, can you see that? It literally changed the placeholder color. And how can you even do that in actual CSS? This is what you have to apply in your actual CSS, right? And it's so long of codes, right? And I might not know how to do that in actual CSS, right? But using Tailwind, you don't have to do that anymore. It is just as simple as saying placeholder, the color you want, and the intensity, right? But I don't want to give you red, actually. I want to give you a gray of 400, right? It looks like a default colors, actually, right? So now what I want to do is I want to give a padding left of 5. So guys, just go ahead and guess. How can you do that in Tailwind? It's just as simple as saying padding left, which is L, right, of 5. So once I do that, it will actually move the entire input, a bit to the right, right? Because you put some padding on the left. Now, what I want to do is actually to make the background to be transparent, right? Sorry, guys. So, sorry, the reason why we are putting transparent is because when we put a border, right? When we put a border outside of the entire inputs, we want the inputs to not be a rectangle, actually. We want it to actually fit to the circular border, right? So we want to make it transparent first so that it will not have any, issue later on, right? So background transparent, and that's all. Right? So guys, can you see this? Yeah, so this is entirely transparent right now. So now the next thing we want to do is actually to put the search icon, right? We want to have the search icon on the right, of the search bar. So what we can do is actually very simple. We can just use hero icons here, right? So now just go ahead and install hero icons. And how can you do that? Is very simple. You just have to say, let me just copy the entire package file. All right. So this is what you have to do: npm install, and just paste this over here. Add symbol. All right. Add symbol hero icons / React. And for those that are using Vue.js, you can do add hero icons / Vue. As simple as that, right? So you can just enter this, and it will install the hero icons for you. And guys, what I will do is actually I will just go ahead and copy all the icons that I need, right, on top of my page, so that we won't waste any time looking for the icons, right? So I'll paste it here, and you guys can go ahead and copy everything you want. So basically, we have a search icon, we have a globe icon, we have a menu, and a user, right? Which is all these 4 icons we need: search, globe, menu, and a user icon, right? So basically, I'll go ahead and save the entire thing. And now what I can do is as simple as using its component, right? So after the input, I just have to say search icon, and I make it as a component, right? So once I save this, as you guys can see, a very huge search icon, right? We don't want this, right? We actually want it to make it smaller, and also to the side of the input. So what we can do, right, guys, if you look at this original clone, right, it's mobile. When it is mobile view, right, the search icon actually is hidden, right? So what we can do, because Tailwind, we are using mobile first design, right? So what we have to do is initially we have to make it hidden first, right? We have to make it hidden first, right? We have to make it hidden first. But when it hits a medium screen, right, we want to start to show the search icon. So what we can do is we can say MD : the entire intelligence blocking, MD : I want to make it inline flags, actually, right? Inline flags. So guys, if I actually expand my page to a medium screen, guys, can you see that? It actually shows already, right? So this is very simple on how you can use media queries, right, in Tailwind CSS. But by just saying MD : it's as simple as that, right? And also we want the actual, okay, let me just make it bigger so we can actually style the icons itself. So what we can do is we can actually apply a background of red color, right? So as you all can see here, our icon actually has like a text of white and the background of red, like an Airbnb color, right? And this is very amazing, right? Because Tailwind CSS actually provides you the intensity that almost looks like the Airbnb color, which is a background rate of 400. So once I save this, as you guys can see, this is a background rate of 400, and it almost looks like the Airbnb color, right? And now what we can do is we can say text white. And you might be wondering, isn't this a logo? Isn't this an image? Isn't this a SVG? Can we say text? Actually, I thought text is only for text. When I save this, it actually works. The reason is because hero icons actually make out of Tailwind, and they make it so simple that if you want to change the color of the logos, the SVGs, the image, is as simple as saying text and whatever colors you want, right? It's so simple, right? So now we can go ahead and make it, make it smaller and stuff like that, right? So let me just go ahead in front of the entire CSS. Let me make it to, okay, over here. Let me make it to a height of 8. Save, yeah, so it looks smaller. And then after that, what I want to do is I want to actually give it, like a circle background, right? So I want to give it a border radius of 100%. And how you can do in Tailwind CSS is very simple. You can just say rounded full, and it will actually make it round entirely, right? And you can specify how rounded you want the border to be. If you put rounded full, it will be a circle. If you put something like a rounded large, it will give some border radius on the top, on the corners, right? But it will not be entirely a circle. And this is so powerful, right? You don't have to guess, the percentage you want to put anymore. You just put the size you want, right? So large, you can put medium, you can put small, or round full, which means that entirely, right? Entirely becomes circles. And this doesn't look nice, right? We want to give some padding on the entire direction so that it becomes smaller, right? So we can put padding of 2. And this is looking amazing, right? And now what we can do is actually to give some padding, to give some margin on the vertical axis so that, when I make it bigger, the size, right, it will actually apply the margin. So I can say medium, the intelligence keeps on blocking, right? Medium of margin on the x-axis of 2. So guys, can you see it? It actually moves, right? And this is not looking nice, right? Because we want the search bar to actually take up all the space, right? We want the search bar to take up all the space. So what we have to do right now is basically just go ahead in this. Okay, let me just go ahead and remove all the colors, right? Because it is kind of blocking our, blocking our design, right? So let's just go ahead and remove the entire the testing colors that we put just now. So it looks like this. All right, now what we want to do is actually we want to give it a flex of item center, right? Align item center for the entire entire div, so that it will actually make it to vertically center. So it is very simple as saying flex. So it becomes flex already, as you can see. And now what I want to put is to make it vertically center. So typically what you will do is you will say align items center, right? But in Tailwind CSS is as simple as saying items center, right? And it is center already. And the cool thing about this, right, guys, is that you can actually make this to grow entirely, right? You can make your input to grow entirely so that it will take up all the available space, right? So what I can do is in the input class, I can just say flex grow. Oops, sorry. Flex grow. Save. And you will see, right, guys? Can you see that? It actually takes up the entire available space. And it will push the entire icons to the most right, right? And this is looking amazing already, right? So now what we want to have is like a border, right? This is the next thing we want to do, a border. So what we can do is in the div, okay, this is what we can do, right? When it hits a medium screen, because initially when it's mobile, we don't want to give any border, right? We want to make it plain, right? So initially we don't want anything, but when it hits medium screen, right? When it hits medium screen, I want to give it a border of 2 pixels, right? Give it a border of 2 pixels. Save. As you guys can see, a border of 2 pixels. And this is not nice, right? We actually want to make it, circular. So we can say rounded, full. And it will go ahead to make it circular as like this, right? And now we want to actually apply some shadow. So it looks a bit outstanding, right? So we can say when it hits medium screen, I want it to be a shadow of small, right? So it doesn't look anything different, but as you guys can see, right, it has actually got some shadow on below and on top as well, right? And this small little detail that you can do in Tailwind CSS is just very amazing, right? Even though it's not visible, right? When you never notice, right? But the small little detail actually that details, right, makes your website looks so different, right? Looks so modern than other websites, right? And the next thing you can do is, of course, apply some padding on the top and bottom by saying padding of Y of 2, which is vertically padding, right? Save. And this is looking amazing, right, guys? This is looking almost the same, right, as the actual one. Of course, this is not actual one. This is the clone itself, right? But it is looking as amazing as it is, right? So now the last thing we might want to do is this one. And I can see the time now is running out already. So probably for this session, maybe we'll talk just about the header only, right? We don't have enough time for the entire thing, right? But the code is provided in my GitHub. So if you want to continue to explore Tailwind CSS and how amazing it is to do something like this, right? Let me give me some time to demo again this entire website. You can do something like this, right? You see that hover effect. When you hover away, it will scale. You can do something like this in Tailwind CSS, and you can actually swipe it, right? And this is so amazing, right, guys? So you can actually do all of this in Tailwind CSS. I will provide this code in my GitHub, so y'all can go ahead and just take the code, study it, revise it, and code it again using Tailwind, right? And practice your Tailwind CSS, right? So now let's just finish these things up, and then after that, probably we'll wrap up, right? So now what we want to have is in our another div, right? In our another div. So what we want is actually we want to make it, we want to give it a p tag for this one, become a host, and after that, these 3 icons, right? So let's just write a p tag. And then for this, we want to put become a host, right, which is a text. Once we save this, so we have this thing over here, right? And we also want to have the globe icon, right, which is everything here. So let me just go ahead and copy everything over here. All right, copy everything over here. And let's just put it under here, right? Now, of course, let's just remove the entire comma and make it into a component, right? Oops. Okay, make it into a component. Right, so now we have these 3 large icons, right? And of course, we want to make the menu and the user to be in a one div, right? Because as you all can see here, I want to make a border around it actually. So let me just wrap it in the div. So I can just do this and I can just wrap it right in the div. And you might be wondering, how can I do that? It's actually an extension called HTML tag wrap, right? You can go ahead and search for that. So once I save this, it doesn't have anything different, but now we can start styling it, right? So now what we will do, right, guys, now what we will do is we can actually go ahead and make the text to be a little bit grayish, right? So actually want to make the entire thing to be gray, right? So in this div, we can say text gray of 500. Right, it will literally go and make the entire text to be gray color of 500, right? And now what we can actually do is, of course, let's just make this icon looks a bit smaller first, right? So let me just go ahead and select everything. And what I will do is I will give a class name and give a height of 6, which is around 24 pixels, right? So once I save this, it looks nicer already, right? And of course, I want to give a cursor pointer. So when the user hover over it, it looks like it is clickable, right? So once I save it, as you guys can see, when I hover over it, it actually becomes clickable, right? Of course, but this is not clickable yet, right? So the next thing we can do, of course, to style the p tag, so we can say class name, okay? Initially, I want to give it a hidden, right? Because as you guys can see over here, right? When it's mobile view, we actually don't want to show the text because it takes up a lot of space. But when it hits a large screen, I want to give an inline, all right? So if it hits a large screen, it will be shown already, right? And this is amazing, right? So now let's continue to make this in a row. So I want to put the entire thing to become a flex box, right? So I'll say flex, and this is all you have to do, right? Flex. And of course, you want to make it to the end, right? And typically what you will do is justify content space end, right? Or I think it's flex end, right? So, but in Tailwind CSS, you can do something like this, justify, and you specify where you want your content to be. So you want it to be on the end, right? Save, and that's all, right? This is looking nicer, right? And now we want to make it vertically center, of course, so that it looks a bit nicer. So what we can do is we can go ahead and say items, which is align items, center, save. And now it is on the in the center, right? And of course, let's give a flex on this div over here as well. So we go here, this div over here, give a class name of flex, right? And it will be on the row. And this is looking amazing already, right? And now what I want to do is actually I want to give a little bit of space on the entire child elements in my div. And this is so simple. If you are using Tailwind CSS, you don't have to specify a padding on the entire thing. You just have to go ahead on their parent div. What you can do is you can just say space, which means that you want to put space on all the child elements on the x-axis, which means horizontally 4. So once I save this, guys, can you see it actually gives space on the entire child element? And of course, not this thing, because this itself is the entire element over here. So you have to specify here as well. You want to give a space of x-axis of 2. So once I save this, as you guys can see, it has some space on between, right? So you don't have to put any more padding on your child element itself, right? And this is so simple using Tailwind CSS, right? And now what we want to do is actually we want to make it, like a gray color border over here, right? So what we can do over here is we can say border of 2, and we can give a rounded full. Now, of course, give a padding of 2, right? Save. And now this is looking amazing, right, guys? So this is actually the actual header of the Airbnb clone, right? And yeah, I think this is about it. I think for the session, right? Unfortunately, we can't finish everything, right? But hope that for today's session, I can, provide a lot of values for everyone that have yet to explore what is Tailwind all about, because I might understand that a lot of people actually scared to start, right? Because they thought that Tailwind CSS is just, inline styling or maybe just something like Bootstrap, right? But it's not, right? For today clone, okay, this is what I'm trying to demo to everyone, right? So basically using Tailwind CSS is very simple if you want to do mobile responsive. If you want to make your entire website looks very, very modern, right? And this is so simple by using Tailwind CSS. And guys, just think about that. You don't have any CSS file. You just need to have a global CSS, and all you need to do is you can put all your utilities in your HTML tag. All right. So thank you everyone for joining this session, and I hope that you guys have a lot of values, and of course at least that hopes that I give you all the motivation to start using Tailwind CSS, right? So thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Yap Yee. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's a very, very informative workshop on like Tailwind CSS, and I'm pretty sure all the viewers will utilize this knowledge that you just shared. Okay, thank you very much. See you all later. Just a reminder that we will have our second workshop at 2 p.m. with Mr. Ming from Anti-Hacker Collective as well. So feel free to tune in at 2 p.m. Happy hacking!